We're live again, Sam. We're live again. Happy to be back and into our next podcast. Welcome,
Wow, that's
everybody.
great.
Welcome to have you here. I'm Ben, AI and process improvement for the Phoenix firm. And this is
I'm Sam.
just Sam.
Um,
Just Sam.
Sam, president and founder of the Phoenix firm. And we're so excited to have everyone today because really data AI is something that we all want to obtain excellence of. But how do you get there, right, Ben? Like it's so many people don't know how to approach it.
Yeah, exactly. And just as we were discussing in our last podcast, the importance of having the right data to even get the right AI. And we're hearing those buzzwords just again and again and again. I want AI, I want AI, and look what it can do for me in this, these great achievements. Yes, but if you don't have the clean data you even start with, then you're not going to be able to get the AI that really will make a difference for you. You can maybe play around in the sandbox, but when it actually comes to making a big difference for your organization, you got to have that clean data. And
Got
that's
it.
really what we're going to be talking about some more today as we get into our process mapping, because that's the backbone, isn't it? Real data analytics and AI has to also have the process mapping. So we talked about data, but then how does that, feed into the right process mapping?
And it's true, right? Like I think it's something that people don't realize. Maybe when they start looking at AI, they understand, okay, AI needs to replace their process, and we'll get further into that. But when it comes to data, often analytics are based on a process or an analysis that is currently being done, right? So how do you match a new platform or the right report to the current process? What is the insight that's being driven right now, right? And that process mapping can be useful in so many ways, and it's so underappreciated.
No, absolutely. And, part of my role really is in process improvement, requires going down into the weeds of what are the processes and how are they built today. So we can't actually even improve processes without going into the weeds, going into those details. And it all needs to be documented. But I'm sure you found yourself as well that, with so many intents that we have to improve processes or even just map it over from one area to another, there's so much that's just not documented. There's just vast amounts that's just not documented. Sam does a great job at this, and he knows it so well, and he's learned it and he's built it as he went. But now, unfortunately, Sam's not here anymore. And what are we even doing? And it's like, well, all the other areas depend on all these pieces, but who's even going to know to do it? So the documentation is one, and that can actually lead to the improvement eventually. But even getting down into those into the weeds there, making sure that it's all even documented is so key.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Like when we think of reports, we often think, okay, well, the numbers are there, the dashboard is there, the report is there, great. But there's a whole lot of steps that are happening behind the scene to make sure that this report is what the business needs, right? And I think so often there is a gap in understanding what are those steps? Where's the data coming from? Where is it going to?
Yeah.
Is anything being modified? Because often we hear the comment, oh, the report is wrong, but the report was built right.
Mhm.
So which step beforehand
Yeah.
actually has failed or is doing something that the end user is not expecting at this particular case, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the key is actually being able to go into that and get down into it so that you have the information that you need for it. And when we talk about AI, in my life in AI, the build AI is just, I would say, one piece or one tool that can help absolutely, but you need to have the process actually built all the way around it. So who's involved when and what does it do? It's the end to end that you have to look at. How does it start and how does it finish? And for every single one of those pieces. And so having all of that built is just the first step. So often what we end up doing is, as we get into the weeds with organizations, it's really okay. Describe to me what you're doing, and how is it like what drives what, and then where does it go, and then make sure that all of those pieces are built in. Once we have that, then it's like, okay, maybe I could make this more efficient or this more efficient or this more efficient. That's not AI. That's really documentation and then finding efficiency.
And I really like what you said. You said who is involved in the process, right? Sometimes we think, well, it's analytics, it's AI, therefore it's systems. But the garbage comes in from usually a human.
Mhm.
And sometimes various groups of humans contribute to that insight that's being populated. So, how are the teams trained to use the system? What is the system allowing them to do? And how is that going to be translated into the data that is feeding analytics or AI? It's such a trajectory. Sometimes we think, okay, the database is our source of truth. Is it though?
Right.
Where is the data coming from?
Yeah.
And oh, well, it's coming from our ERP. Okay, that's great. How is the data getting there?
Mhm.
At which point is there potential for data to be misentered, right? I think last time we spoke about that, the dates format. Here in Canada, it's
Yeah.
awesome. We have two very distinct one on the East Coast, on the rest of the country, and all of that can create really a big level of confusion. So
Yeah.
how do we make sure that this is prevented from the start?
Yeah. Well, that's just it. And as we go down that path, um, again, just going back to the implementation of an AI piece, um, you really can't implement what you want to without having all of this understood well. And I'm going to say this 1,000 times, and I probably already have, if not closer to 10,000 times. Garbage in is garbage out.
Yeah.
And that's really exactly what the point is, isn't it? That um, every time we keep feeding it with garbage, maybe the report is not what we need. It's lacking information. And what does that lead to? Well, either we have um, processes that aren't working properly, or we have decisions that are getting made on a lack of data or somehow skewed. And that can take us completely in a different direction.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any examples of that.
Well, actually, a few years back, we had an organization that approached us and they wanted to look at cases that transacted through their organization. And interestingly enough, talking to the different department, everybody wanted to know that KPI, right? Like, what
Yeah.
is the number of cases that we've seen? But different point of the organization cared about different segment of where the case was. So for the logistic department, they cared how many were delivered, right, on the day of. But the drivers were driving 24 hours. Like they were working all day. So sometimes, even though the boxes had been picked, which was important for warehousing, even though it had been loaded on the truck, which was important for the back of the warehouse, even though they had left the building, therefore been invoiced, therefore finance cared about that. The transportation team wanted to know how many had been delivered on a certain day. So everybody wanted to have the same number, but from a different angle,
Correct.
which meant
Mhm.
we had to develop several different KPIs because everybody was adamant that their numbers, they needed to know the cases at their stage, right? So understanding the KPI, but also understanding the process flow because it's very easy. And a lot of organization have seen that where a requirement is sent forward, right? But the output is exactly just that. What was written on the piece of paper is returned to us.
Mhm.
But there is a lot of little details that needs to be taken in consideration. And that requires a knowledge of like the enterprise, but it also requires, we're going to go back to it, the process being mapped,
Yeah.
understanding each step and where is that person coming into, right? And then you can really have a proper image of, okay, what is the requirement? in an organization.
So, like, I want to improve my organization. I know that there are inefficiencies. I see so many across the street that are doing better than I am, and I'm wearing too many hats to try to figure it all out. Um, where do I even get started? How do I do that?
So, honestly, it's a question that we see more often, and people sometimes are not even asking it because they feel, well, I should know the answer, right? And that's where it comes. It's sad to see that people are struggling and they shouldn't, and it's normal. A lot of people do, but we want to make sure that we're there for them, right? So, and some organization will just use, a good old notepad, draw it out, and if the processes are very simple, that's enough. Perfect. It's a good start, right? And sometimes they say, well, I don't want to go too much in details. It's fine. There is various level of things that can be mapped, and it can be mapped to. Hey, we've seen organization do a detailed, like the process mapping is so detailed that it can really be used as audit material for Health Canada and other like regulatory bodies to use that and to make sure that processes are being followed. But the first step is, okay, sitting down and saying, I'll put 5 minutes. What am I doing today? What are the steps that I've taken to do that? And from there, that's such a good starting point to have a basis as to what we can do, what we can automate, and what are the KPIs we should know and drive our business with.
Yeah, exactly. And like anything else, it's important that we start small, right? Like I think you can't boil the ocean, right? So if you start small, then you see what is needed. Um, and again, what are the different humans in the loop for all of it, so that you have one piece, and once that's done well, then you can start to map it out to other areas of the organization, so that that too is improving. I know in our assessments that often, we come up with three things. Here's your start now, right? Like this is low hanging fruit right away. This is where you can start and maybe get some improvements today, tomorrow, right? Very, very early and quick, and not a lot of not a lot of effort needed. Um, this here on the end though is more about, okay, what are your long term investments, your bigger investments, to really get the ROI that you're looking for, and the efficiencies that you need, right? And then there's this point in the middle. And I would say that almost everybody is here. They're happy to start with whatever is small and easy. As we go down this path, though, this requires budgeting, to some extent. That's always difficult because it needs to be in the budget annually, quarterly, etc. But then this piece, yeah, now you need perhaps board approval. Maybe you need, multiple partners, et cetera, involved. It gets there. But again, if we go back to number one, it's really being able to prove that if I can do this, then yes, I can do this. There is an effectiveness there. And as you do that, you evaluate, what are my like, how am I approaching this? Am I doing it correctly? What can I improve here and there in order to make it faster, better, the better outcome in the end? And so it's a process as we go through it. But again, the point being that we really just start small and grow from there. But I wanted to ask you, Sam, like, what are some of the tools that different businesses can be considering, small, medium, large, in order to do process mapping?
So there is a lot of tools out there, right? And some organization, again, will use the notepad, will use uh, Excel, might use anything. But our recommendation to a lot of our clients is using an adequate tool for your requirements. Um, we've recommended to a lot of our clients a tool called Adonis.
Mhm.
Um, we can probably add a link in the description afterwards, but it's a tool that truly describes the whole process. They have an AI that will help build that process, even at least a draft of it, And what's, I think, the next step above, and why I believe that they are to the level they are, is the fact that it allows to identify risk. It allows to identify the time that a step take, a task take, I should say. And it also allows to assign responsible for what, who's accountable, who should be notified
Yeah.
if there is a change. And the system is done in a way that you can map the process. And if you, as a manager, are thinking, okay, so and so is there, she's gonna be going in maternity leave. What are the things we need to train the replacement on?
Yeah.
What is it? A lot of people would have to go ask her, okay, what are the things that you do on a daily basis that you need to pass to someone else, right? Now, this tool allows you to see, okay, well, that person needs to be notified on all of those 4 processes. She actually manages 10 processes, and all of the processes or the steps that are involved in the processes she's involved in will require at least 30 hours of work in a day, in in a week. Like,
She
well,
feels it.
then exactly, and that's why, she's leaving. No, but, uh, the fact of the matter is you can then evaluate, okay, how quickly can we train someone on 30 hours of processes that they need to follow? Then the following step is, okay, how can we maybe reduce that? How can we improve our processes? And I think that's what, you were talking earlier of organization might need to consider a budget.
Yeah.
Often we put in such high excellence companies like Coca-Cola in their supply chain, in their operations, how efficient they are, how Walmart is so efficient. Companies that drive such big part of industries and large volume, they have teams dedicated to process improvement,
Yeah.
dedicated to mapping out the processes, and on a regular basis will look back at the processes and say, okay, there is redundancy, or there is a new platform that exists that can help us with removing those 5 steps. And and I think that's a lot of people have realized the benefit of that now that AI is becoming so prevalent, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And those teams really are made up of, those who know the processes so well, and maybe they've done it for years. But then also, it's important to bring those in that are just maybe they know nothing about those processes.
Yep.
And the reason is because they can think outside the box, right? We often, don't see the forest for the trees because we are used to doing things in a certain way, and that's just how it's done. But when you have someone who's looking at it maybe for the first time, but their process, thought is like, well, why is it that way? Or why is it that way? And really to generate the right culture in the organization that it's okay to ask those questions and then, reevaluate, well, what if we did this or what if we did this? And sometimes, there's rules that are in place for good reason. And once they're informed, it's like, oh, okay, well, then we have no choice. This needs to be included. But other times it was a rule that was done, way back in the early 90s or late 80s. And, because this happened and this happened. And, as a result, we built all these other things so that it never happens again. It's like, well, wait a minute. But what is the risk that's actually there? And I think there's risk, but then there's also what is the effort that it takes to do that? And if the effort is actually costing more than the risk would ever represent, why am I doing it? Can I actually scale it back? And so again, it's that outside of the box thinking that's needed to look into it.
And it's interesting, right? Because squeaky wheel gets the oil,
Yeah.
right? And often we see that in our organization. They think, okay, well, our processes need to be all revamped because of we have an issue with this. Okay, when did this issue happen? Is that really your issue, or is it a symptom from another part, right? And I feel that Our organization, when they're reactive to a problem, they don't map out, they don't plan for the process or plan for the changes that are required. And then they end up causing themselves, to your point, more work, more cost to the organization because they're putting a band-aid on something that required a surgery. So how do you
Absolutely.
address that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what do we want our listeners to take away with them from our podcast today?
I would say start small, but make sure you start this week. Start with one process. And if you don't have really the framework, you don't know how to maybe even start, that's okay. Ask question, ask people in your organizations that might be aware of that. Send us a message. Like Ben and I are more than happy to help out. There's great tools out there like Adonis that can help you start, and it might seem overwhelming, but it does not have to be.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to AIify, this is where you need to start to make sure that you
Foundation.
have this done correctly, all documented. Sam, thank you so much. It's been great chatting as always. And once again, I'm going to play a bit of music to carry us out. And we'll see everybody on the next podcast that we have. This is Signals from the Ashes, Phoenix Firm. Always happy to see everybody.
Nice being on.
Good. That's it. Oh, no. Let's go recording.